Hey, greetings everyone. It is GleeCon, and I'm back once again with yet another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we took Shalashir and we ran through some more Darkshore. She's still not done with that region. It's really taken her a long time. And in large part because her, more than any other character, because she runs at her own pace, we're keeping very locked into a tight 1 hour at a time episodic format. She just barely goes over a couple minutes each time. She also got an elite quest which slowed her down, fighting off a kind of like a not a harvest golem, but it's some sort of golem with dagger fingers, and she needed an assistant, but she was able to two-man it with one other person because it was a level 20 elite. She's level 20. We've also been reading this monster manual or monster guide, the one of the last books in the Dungeons and Dragons series of World of Warcraft, the role-playing game. We read up through G last time. I think maybe we did like E through G, and stay a while and listen as we pick up with the H's and continue our journey through this, what has actually been a fairly delightful book. I apologize in advance for any audio pollution today. We are in the final stages. I'm in the final stages of moving my setup to a quieter, kind of more soundproof studio. That's just a fancy way. I'm putting everything back in a bedroom. That's one, carpeted, so as opposed to most of my house is wood, and two, I can kind of be in a far back corner of the house and closed off, and I can close up everything when I'm recording, and I should be able to keep the audio noise down, the dog out, so the rest of the family can go about their lives. So today's Monday. I have almost finished everything in terms of setup back there from my side. There's a lot that I have to do to move. The last step is moving this computer setup that I have out here, but I'm kind of waiting until the end. Everything else is just about done. I use the room for other things. You'll see when the camera clicks on when we're back there what my sort of what this room looks like, and it's a pretty cool setup I have back there. It's kind of like a game room for me and my son, but I'm waiting basically on one piece of equipment to come in the next day or two, and then on Thursday they're going to come out and move my hardline cables back from the room that I have it in now in the center of the house to back there. So just a few days, three or so days from now, my episode should start to be in a new setting in the background and a little bit more audio clean. And I think I'll start running a filter at that point in time that can kind of take out the chair squeaks and stuff like that. All right, so here we go. We're going to begin with harpies. These are it's challenge rating 1, but usually that happens when you can be a playable character, and that's what they are showing that you can with these harpies. I don't even know what the clothing style is, what's feathered, what's clothed, but they apparently like anklet bracelets. This creature is a graceful winged humanoid. Its feminine face is beautiful and faintly elven, and it has bird-like feet and clawed hands. It is dirty and unkempt, and a foul, unwashed smell emanates from it. I think the backstory of where harpies come from, I don't think we have a lot of that. On Draenor, there's the whole storyline with the Arakoa. We also know that Aviana, one of the goddesses, that demigods in league with Cenarius, she's essentially a harpy. So where does what lines can we trace between that and this pretty primal, you could argue evil race of people? I can't think of any quest line where you have good harpies. Harpies are cruel creatures that resemble a combination of brightly colored bird and vaguely elven female. Also, where are the male harpies? They live to breed more of their kind and to prey upon the unwary. They enjoy killing, torture, and wanton destruction. Harpies either wear no clothing or else dress in the clothes of their female victims. Their perpetually bitter expressions and angry outcries attest to their shrewish temperament. Indeed, among their kind, harpies like nothing better than to argue and bicker over everything from safe havens to who gets priority when making a kill. Legends claim that harpies are descended from elves who betrayed Jara and that their transformation into their current hideous shapes is their punishment for that transgression. Harpies don't particularly care if this story is true. They simply want to continue their lives of violence and destruction and ensure the continuation of their species. All right, so there's one possible theory. It almost sounds like a fan theory, and then tied mostly to the fact that they kind of look elven. They are also located in Kalimdor, but I feel like that's a breadcrumb for us to follow, and we'll keep our kind of ear to the pavement when it comes to this sort of thing in the future, but it doesn't really answer questions. It just offers a theory. Harpy society is made up of a loose network of hunting parties, usually led by a shaman called a wind witch. Wind witch shaman exercise a modicum of leadership among groups of harpies, deciding when it is time to move their lairs or decreeing which captives will be preserved for breeding purposes. Oh, so they breed with their captives only? No male harpies have been reported, so rumor has it. Harpies breed with captive males of many species, though they prefer elves, orcs, and humans to either smaller or larger species. Despite their contentious natures, harpies cooperate in raising their young, a communal process that results in teaching harpy fledglings to hunt and kill their prey, as well as to compete with their companions. Harpies speak low common. All right, so that answers that question too, which means that lends credence to the fact that this must be a magically created race if they can only breed with other races, and yet they somehow still produce more female harpies. Harpies usually attack from the distance first, throwing their javelins. I don't know that we fought any that do that so far. They close to melee and use their powerful clawed feet and daggers to rip their enemies apart. Pairs of harpies often attack in tandem, trying to gain flanking bonuses, while larger groups may or may not assist one another in combat. They are also good scouts, and they can be played as a playable character. It says if you're going to do that, you should wait until you're doing a campaign of at least 5th level characters, because you're creating an OP character in the sense that they can fly. All right, Hellboars are challenge rating 8. Whoopsie. I guess this is... It says the spiny mottled boar burns with a reddish-orange flame. I guess some of these are basically demonic boars. Some of them, a lot of them you fight on Draenor, but maybe there's some around like the burning portal or whatever. The dark portal, burning steps. Hellboar were once ordinary boars, now mutated by the earth-shattering magic of the Blasted Lands. The arcane fire that savaged the region was absorbed into native boars, turning them into savage, ferocious predators. Okay. The body of a Hellboar is constantly aflame, although this flame deals no damage to the creature. Hellboar are omnivores, but consume only plants or animals thoroughly cooked by their flames. Typically, Hellboar are 4 feet long, they stand 3 feet high, and weigh 300 pounds or more. Hellboar viciously charge any creature that enters their territory. Once engaged in melee, they use their flaming gore attack to tear into and fry their opponents. They have a flaming charge, which is basically like a strong charge that catches their chargees in fire. And they have the ferocity trait, so they're hard to drop. And they have a flaming body. So if you're attacking them in melee, you take fire damage when you hit them, and it helps them resist cold. All right, most likely our final H, because it's an HY, is Hydra. Challenge rating 11. I guess you fight these all throughout, but they're also on Draenor. This lizard-like creature rears up on 2 powerful legs, scales and fins cover its body, and 3 heads on snake-like necks turn to look at you. Hydras are 3-headed beasts that dwell in marshes and in damp underground areas. They are notoriously difficult to kill, both because their wounds heal quickly, and when another creature would die from similar wounds, they split into 2 smaller hydras. Now, I don't remember seeing them do that in the game. Some savage creatures discover ways to use hydras as guardians, though these creatures are by no means domesticated. Maybe in like Black Fathom Deeps or something like that, you'll fight some splitters. Hydras are fearless because they know they are tough customers. They charge with little intelligence or tactics. Multiple hydras, such as those created when a large hydra becomes 2 smaller hydras, use flanking tactics and attempt to overwhelm a single opponent before moving on to the next. So they do have a poison bite or poison spit. Their spit shoots pretty hard, like pretty far, and one can be spitting while the other heads are biting. They do have rejuvenation, fast healing, and they can split when they die, which is interesting. And And it looks like they can continue to split down until they get tiny sized. Because they have multiple heads, they're also hard to surprise. All right, we're now moving on to the eyes with the imps. Challenge rating 1s. This small, thin humanoid has 2 long horns and bright yellow eyes. A wicked grin spreads across its narrow face as a ball of flame materializes in its palm. Imps are small demons that hold limited arcane power. They often serve more powerful beings, usually demons or warlocks, though its natural deference to a master makes it a prized servant, and imps' impetuous and destructive tendencies can manifest at the worst possible times. Imps love fire. If left unchecked, they tend to ignite whatever flammable material they come across. Most imps that make their home on Azeroth dwell in the Burning Steppes or inside Blackrock Mountain. An imp found elsewhere is likely a warlock's fell companion, or else it has come directly from the Twisting Nether. Imps speak Eredun, and some also speak Common. When outmatched, imps simply run, only to show up later when their enemies are weakened or occupied. In groups, they're capable of simple group tactics such as focusing their attacks on one opponent and setting up ambushes. An imp engages a foe in melee only as a last resort, preferring to use lesser firebolt from a safe distance. While accompanying its master, an imp almost always acts exactly as instructed. Sometimes, though, an imp that is feeling particularly bold may take an action that its master hasn't expressly forbidden, such as secretly lighting a table on fire or finishing off a creature that its master intended to take prisoner. Okay, so it just casts its lesser firebolt, and in turn it has a small amount of spell resistance. Alright, continuing on with these eye demons, we have the Infernals, with the Lesser Infernal, Infernal, and Massive Infernals having challenge ratings of 7, 12, and 22, respectively. The body of this massive creature is vaguely humanoid, made of shifting stones with an otherworldly appearance. The creature's joints and face exude greenish-yellow flames. Infernals are savage extraplanar creatures that dwell in an unknown brutal corner of the Twisting Nether. They are a strange combination of demon and construct. Most demons shun them as uncontrollable and savage. Warlocks who summon Infernals do so at great risk to themselves, for an Infernal that breaks free attacks its former controller with unfettered ferocity. Unsummoned Infernals arrive through weaknesses in the cross-planar boundaries, crashing to Azeroth in devastating meteoric impacts. The Infernal rises from the resulting crater and sets off an orgy of destruction that can last hours. Fortunately for the rest of the world, an Infernal's time on Azeroth is limited to less than a day, whereupon the Twisting Nether swallows it up once again. Also, fortunately for Azeroth, Infernals appear only in places where the boundaries between planes are unnaturally weak, and such locales are rare, or if you have like an OP Warlock. Lesser Infernals stand 10 feet high and weigh 2,000 pounds. They do not speak that they understand Eredun. A Lesser Infernal attacks indiscriminately. It is somewhat less cunning than larger Infernals and tends simply to go after the nearest opponent. Damage they take only infuriates them. A Lesser Infernal never retreats from a fight. Now, it has a blazing body, which means if you even stand close to it, you take a little bit of damage, and you take slightly more when you hit it. It also burns, meaning if it hits you, you catch on fire. It does a lesser fell strike. So meaning, I guess, it just adds a little fell damage onto its hits. And it has a meteoric arrival. As you've seen when you play the game, when they arrive as a meteor, so they just slam into the ground. Anybody that gets hit by that takes a bunch of damage. You can have a chance of dodging it, but it also sets things around, and they count as constructs. Now, regular Infernals are larger and rarer than Lesser Infernals. They stand 15 feet high and weigh 15,000 pounds. So that extra 5 feet of height, like, multiplies their weight by over 7 times. Infernals are straightforward combatants that enjoy destruction for destruction's sake. In combat, they prefer to attack weak or soft targets first, saving more difficult opponents for last. Infernals use the reckless attack feat to maximize their damage against weaker foes. Failing that, they attack most flammable seeming enemy, apparently enjoying the resulting blaze. They too have a blazing body that's even stronger than the Minfernals. They too can burn, meteoric arrival, and they have a demonic reinforcement, which means that they have double the hit points. So that's cool. Massive Infernals are terrifying monstrosities that appear only in places where the fabric of reality has been savagely torn asunder. Even then, they are exceptionally rare. A warlock who would dare to summon a massive infernal does so at peril not only of his own life, but of the life of everything for miles in all directions. They are 24 feet high and weigh 32,000 pounds. A massive infernal has a degree of cunning beyond that of other infernals and chooses its foes with more care. It optimizes its attacks to deal the most damage and destruction with the least risk to itself. Massive infernals revel in carnage as much as their smaller cousins, but they reserve the wanton slaughter until after they have eliminated major threats. Their blazing body is quite strong, like quadruple that of the mini infernal. Their burn is also very strong DC, and it lasts longer, but otherwise the damage is the same. Their greater fell strike is, considering 1 point for the mini, it can do from 2 to 12. They also have a massive meteoric arrival with a 20-foot wide crater, and they have an improved demonic reinforcement that gives it triple hit points. Very strong. All right, and now we move on to Ks with the baby kobold challenge rating 1, probably because they can be player characters. Maybe? I don't know. Most humanoids can. This small rat-like humanoid has a long snout. White hair pokes from beneath a ragged cap on which perches a dribbling white candle. It hoists a leather pack over its left shoulder and a mining pick over its right. Its eyes glitter with wariness. Okay, so kobolds are cowardly humanoids that dwell underground and spend their lives mining, primarily for gold. Though not powerful individually, they congregate in large numbers and can prove a nuisance and occasionally a danger. They live in fear of larger races and rarely venture outside their tunnels. Yeah, just because of their numbers and spawn rate, that's the reason why you die to kobolds. Kobolds trade the gold and other minerals they unearth to goblins and other patrons for all the goods they need to survive. Occasionally they purchase protection as well. As they can't see perfectly well in the dark, kobolds have a great affinity for candles. The kobold presented above uses the elite ability score and has 1 level in the rogue class, so it's a sneaky kobold. Kobolds are cowardly and flee from most combats, however they are tenacious and fierce when cornered, so when their lairs are threatened they attack with abandon. They are not particularly intelligent, and their tactics leave much to be desired. Though they are naturally stealthy, they use this ability for escape more often than ambush. When fighting opponents, they attempt to overwhelm them with large numbers. Occasionally, adventurers find kobolds so cowardly that they refuse to help their friends when they fall under attack nearby. These craven creatures prefer to simply go about their business, sweating in fear all the while, and hope that the troublesome adventurers leave them alone. That's explaining the yellow, like the neutral kobolds that you find in the starting areas. And kobolds can be played as characters. They are fast but dumb. They're small. So because they're small, they're slow. They do have low night vision, and they have candle morale. If they have a little lit candle on their head, they gain extra morale, and they're less susceptible to fear. However, if it is extinguished, they're now extra weak. It says... Oh, I see. You can try to snuff out the candle. If you take a penalty to your roll, you can snuff out the candle with a hit. So they're not extra weak if it's extinguished. They are, because they're kind of like rat-like, they're good at spotting. And they actually are pretty decent miners, appraising, searching, stealthing. They like to fight with picks more than anything else. They speak Common and Low Common, and they can gain a couple of the languages, Dwarven, Thalassians, and Dali, because that's where they're nearby. All right, now we are already jumping on to elves, starting off with liches. This is a very, obviously you can see we're building a whole template here because liches are unique. They're rare enough. You're not walking around fighting liches as mobs. During his mortal life, the Lich King, Ner'zhul, commanded a number of orc warlocks and shaman. When Kil'jaeden and the Legion captured these wicked spellcasters after the destruction of Draenor, the demons ritually slew their prisoners and animated them into twisted, frightening parodies of their former selves. The resulting liches possessed tremendous magical powers, though their immortal undead bodies were bound to Ner'zhul's iron will. Since the liches showed unswerving loyalty to their master, Ner'zhul granted them control over the furious elements of the cold north. Since Draenor's destruction, other necromancers of particular loyalty have also become liches. Liches are among the most powerful spellcasters and allies of the Scourge, serving their master with evil intent and great power. Often they command armies as generals, surrogates for the Lich King himself. They are deeply entwined with the cold power of the grave. As a rule, these creatures are power-hungry, devious, and vicious. They utilize their great intellect and dark powers not only to serve the Lich King, but also to defeat each other in subtle political machinations, gaining strength and renown from each opponent's death. A Lich resembles a skeleton with a chill blue glow emanating from within its bones. Liches often dress in flowing robes. Instead of walking on the ground as mortals do, Liches float above it on frosty mist. Alright, so Liches is a template. You must be at least 8th level and be completely loyal to the Scourge. It says typically you must be a necromancer, but mages and shamans could hypothetically also attain this template. You could become a Lich of your own will, but that would be like a whole campaign or unique legendary person. You become an undead. Your hit die becomes max at D12. You gain a natural armor bonus. Your attack is a touch attack. You can also still use weapons. If you full attack, you can use your touch attack and weapon in conjunction. They do cold damage, and the stronger it's pretty strong because it's 1d8 damage plus 1 for every hit die you have. So basically 1 per level. Or it's natural weaponry, which it adds the extra plus 1 damage onto its natural weaponry. It does have special attacks, a cold aura, which freezes people around them, and anyone standing close just takes damage. Cold substitution, so any spell they would have, they can make it a cold version. And Power of the North, which makes all of their spells extra powerful. They have damage reduction against magic and bludgeoning damage. They float, and they have immunities to cold, polymorph, electricity, mind control type things, and they're extra hard to turn. They're very good at detecting stealth. They gain bonuses to stats as soon as they become one: agility, intelligence, charisma. And they're usually evil. You pretty much are going to be evil. The example human Lich they give says Chilling Mist. First of all, this is a challenge rating 8, so it's the lowest level Lich you can be. Chilling Mist billows from his skeletal figure. It floats on a cloud of frost, and black robes flow from its evil form. Human necromancers are the most likely candidates for Liches. These Liches are evil, cunning, and loyal to the Lich King. They serve as generals of his armies and as advisors to other powerful members of the Scourge. This Lich is somewhat inexperienced and probably new to his undead existence, but he is filled with power and arrogance. Liches prefer to have hordes of minions surrounding them. These lesser undead creatures protect the Lich while he casts spells from a distance. Liches have no qualms about fleeing if the situation warrants. And there are some they gain necromancer spells, basically. Alright, so we're going to move on to M's now. This will probably be our last letter on this episode, and after finishing it, we'll be halfway through this book, halfway through the alphabet. We're going to begin with makrura, which they're challenge rating 1, but the makrura tide crawlers are level 3. The creature closely resembles a many-legged gigantic crayfish, with a carapace painted in an array of violet and purple. Two men's pincers clack together menacingly, with tiny eyes on stalks gazing unblinkingly in your direction. I just had that little freak out I have sometimes where I'm like, did I ever push record? Makrura are aquatic creatures that superficially resemble enormous crayfish, and uneducated observers have mistakenly dubbed them lobstermen. Lobster people. They sport strong pincers used solely for combat, as well as 6 small tentacles close to the head that can be used for finer manipulation. They walk on 4 small legs that extend out from under a flat, flippered tail, and have 2 clawed arms they use for combat. Makrura are amphibious and dwell equally well on land or underwater, although they prefer shallow tropical seas. Makrura suffer from the extreme disadvantage of being tasty to many carnivorous races, a fact appreciated all too well by their enemies on both land and sea. While land dwellers sometimes hunt them for food, and Makrura's most hated enemies are Murlocs and Naga, but especially the latter. Murlocs consider makrura a snack to be eaten raw, while Naga maintain a wide variety of makrura recipes and sometimes raise the poor creatures from birth in special farms. Makrura society is matriarchal. Male makrura mate only once and then molt into sexless drones, although they are still referred to as he for all practical purposes. Makrura appear scattered and tribal, but in reality they have a large capital city, Makaru, in the eye, close to the Naga capital of Najatar. I think we read about that in one of our previous books. Also, I wonder if that's how crayfish really are. Do they mate once and then become drones? But the real question is, when do they taste better? Makrura are primitive, knowing little of advanced magic, craftsmanship, or technology. They use tools only to build their crude underwater dwellings and shellfish traps, or to break apart giant clams, their favorite food. Makrura decorate their hard carapaces with tribal markings and colors, but otherwise disdain clothing, armor, and other trappings of civilization. Their carapaces come in many colors, including shades of red, blue, and black. Makrura, regardless of gender, are typically 12 feet long and weigh 500 pounds. Both appear identical to non-Makrura observers, unless a female is carrying a clutch of eggs on her torso. Females typically bear several hundred eggs at a time, maintaining them for several months until they hatch, but less than 1/5 of these survive to maturity, because they're too delicious. Makrura speak Nurglish, a low aquatic tongue. There's the lobster people. Makrura fight by grappling an opponent with one pincer and holding it in place while the other pincer tears it apart. Makrura defend their territory aggressively, although they attack Murlocs and Naga on sight. They do have an elite ability score array, and they have the improved grab ability. Now, Makrura Tidecallers are the shaman of their tribes, and as such are respected, honored, and just as often feared by their fellows. A clan usually has a chief shaman and several apprentices, such as the one shown here, all of whom are rivals for their chief's attention. Should the chief shaman perish, the apprentices battle to the death for the right to become the new spiritual leader of their clan. This is really a deep dive into Makrura here. Makrura Tidecallers tend to be weaker than their fellows, but make up for their lack of strength with a command of divine magic. Makrura Tidecaller chiefs can wield great power and are rightly feared. The Makrura presented above, they have the elite skill ability score array. Also, they focus on cold spells. They don't like fire spells because they're going to be underwater most of the time. They do have some extra shaman spells, war drums, bless, stuff like that. Lightning guardians. They can be played as characters. They like to be barbarians, scouts, warriors, and healers, and shaman. But they're like tinkers, arcanists. They just don't really exist. They are nice. They're actually a nice race, even though every time I see one, they freaking attack me on sight. And some can even become adventurers. They gain bonuses to strength and stamina, but lose everything else: agility, intellect, charisma. They're medium, they're slow, but in the water they're faster. They are good at swimming, no shocker. And while they are monstrous, they are immune to, they're immune to like hold person stuff because you have to treat them like monsters. They are aquatic, they have dark vision, they have a natural armor bonus because of their chitin. They're partially amphibious, which means if they spend too much time out of the water, they start taking damage. So it would be a tough campaign to play. And they can't recover damage until they go back in the water. They are hard to knock over because of all their legs. They have an unusual anatomy, which means that anything that would require fine motor skills, they suffer a huge penalty to. And they are not good at using weapons. This would not be fun to play at all. As they level up, if you take the racial class, they gain more armor, attack roll, specifically against Naga, and better grabbing skills, and they get bigger. They can use magical items that use the wrist slot by putting them on their pincers, so bracelets and stuff. And they can wear armor if it's custom made for them. They mostly like to be barbarians. So let's see. They also gain improved swim speed as they level up in their class. All right, so now we have the mana surge. I've always liked to say mana, but I know a lot of people say mana. I guess certain things like the game Secret of Mana, I like that a little bit better, but I when I was a kid I said Secret of Mana. These are basically like elementals made of mana. They use the same like character model as a elemental. The mana surges are level 2, mana bursts are also level 2. A glowing ball of light bobs up and down as it flits along. Tiny sparks dance around the creature as it moves. Mana surges are air elementals spawned in areas where magical energy naturally combines with electrical storms. They consume magic and are drawn to sources of power such as magic items or spellcasters. They move constantly but randomly, ever seeking new sources of energy on which to feed. Mana surges are aggressive, especially if they sense magic nearby. They distract foes with electrical charges while consuming whatever magic they can absorb. Once sated, they lose interest and fly away. A mana surge and mana surge can be distracted by giving it a charged item such as a wand or a staff to feed upon. Mana surges are approximately 1 foot in diameter and weigh almost nothing, although their relative size fluctuates depending on how much magic they have drained recently. Mana surges do not speak or understand any sort of language, although sometimes captured for use against spellcasters. They cannot be trained and make poor pets. Mana surges automatically sense the most powerful source of magic in the area and attack that opponent exclusively, ignoring all other threats. They drain magic until sated and then depart the area to digest. Mana surges have no sense of self-preservation and attack regardless of any danger to themselves. They have a spell drain, which, they drain the spells, and then for each, they gain hit points back when they drain it, and then they can discharge it also with a touch attack. They have a spell surge. If a spell is cast within them, they can attempt to absorb it. Same kind of deal as before. They're immune to magic, and they can sense magic. Now, mana bursts look and act in the same manner as a mana surge. The major difference is the creature's spell burst ability. Mana bursts cannot surge like a mana surge can. Mana bursts sometimes appear amid groups of mana surges. Their unexpected explosion can be an unwelcome surprise in the midst of a fight. They seek out the most powerful spellcasters they can find and drain spell energy from that opponent until sated. So their difference is the fact that they have a spell burst. Instead of surging, which gives them extra hit points and does the touch attack, they just explode. So they're, much tougher. They're kamikaze. It says they explode. It also makes a dispel magic around them. It doesn't say that they die from it, though. So, yeah. To all creatures within 15 feet. I mean, I guess it would hurt them as well. Because it doesn't... They're within 15 feet. I don't know if it would hurt them or not. I guess you'd have to decide because it doesn't specify. Alright, so now we're going to look at mechanized animals. This is a class, like a template that you would put on some things. Tinkers strive constantly to create the perfect tool. Some actually believe that constructs are the purest form of life. So they recreate the world's natural creatures in this perfect state. Most mechanized animals barely resemble their organic counterparts, but many tinkers claim they are perfect nonetheless and keep them as pets. Most mechanized animals are simply referred to as mechanized versions of their natural equivalent. However, some mechanized animals in widespread use go by different names, such as a mechanostrider, the little mounts for the gnomes. So you'd basically put it on a template. You keep the same size and type, but your hit dice for the most part will go up to a D10. Speed is the same, but the maneuverability goes down. So like a mechanical bird would be more clumsy than a normal one. But they gain extra armor. The extra damage is increased, is shown here. It's the same as the base creature. But if they didn't have an attack, they gain this. They can make the slam attack even if they didn't have one before. And their damage is based on their size, basically. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same. They do have the constructed mind, so they're immune to like mind effects. They have hardness, so they have to be treated like an object when they're damaged, and they have a chance of malfunctioning. They have terrible saving throws because they're a construct. They gain extra strength, but they reduce their agility. Their charisma is nothing because they're a robot, and their spirit is just average, regardless of whatever their animal form would have had. Other than that, they're just usually advanced. You just upgrade them. They're not really a level up thing. So the sample animal is a challenge rating 2. It's a mechanostrider, a mechanized tall strider. This construct vaguely resembles a mechanized tall strider. Small oval lamps replace its eyes, while great mufflers extend where its tail feathers should be. When gnomes set out to explore the world once again after their city's fall, they soon realized that they needed reliable mechanical mounts. One ingenious gnome spied a flock of tall striders and remarked upon their grace and strength. Soon after was born the mechanostrider, which quickly became a favorite mount of all gnome kind. While these constructs are as dumb as a brick, and even some bricks are smarter, it is said, they are reliable mounts, and when handled by the best mechanostriders, better than live mounts. And then there's also the mechanostrider version 2.0. This is the one presented in this book is version 2.0. It's the mount version. It replaces the one from the other book. It says the older model is cheaper and viable. So basically, I think this is the elite mount version, whereas the other one would be your level 40 mount. A mechanostrider fights only when ordered to or threatened, lashing out with its sharp beak and claws, or simply hammering at the danger with its heavy metallic head. Costs 8,000 gold. Thank gosh it doesn't cost that much in the real game. It weighs 300 pounds. Craft DC of 70? I don't know how you get that high. To construct any mechanized animal. I guess that's we skimmed over the logistics of that, but they have technology scores, function difficulties, complexity scores, the time, all of those things, fuel. So I'm guessing a mechanostrider technically takes fuel. I don't know. All right, so that is that gets us through M's. We've got page-wise, we're not quite halfway through, so there might be a little bit of backloaded letters, or it might just be that the addendum at the end is going to be longer, but we've probably got a few more, 3 to 4 more episodes to get us through this book. But for now, this one is in the pipe, 5x5. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I hope that you enjoyed it because I sure did. See you on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft.